Hey guys, Sonic19 here with another deck profile. This is an updated deck profile of my Nightmareland deck. If you've ever been to my channel before, about 2 years ago, I made this deck back in G-Era towards the end of set 14 Apocrypha. I believe this was going to be a very defensive type of build that Butcher was pressing for Dark Irregulars, but never had the chance to finish because they were so rushing towards the reboot. This is another one of those decks. If you watch my Grand Blue deck profile, I mentioned this before. So this is my rendition of this. The way that I rebuilt this deck, is a one-hitter quitter when you get to your first stride, and I'll show you how to do it. This deck has a lot of draw and a lot of soul and a lot of potential, I would say. So my first starter here is Spade Jack of Nightmareland. He has a similar ability like the new V-Era starters. When you ride a unit of the same clan, you get to draw one. But following that Dark Irregular vibe, you also get to take a card from your hand and soul charge it, starting off your soul really strong. In addition to that, is that he has the stride skill. When you stride, you can summon him. You can summon him from your soul to a rear guard position, and then soul charge another card to replace himself. So all around, I believe he's a very good all around card. Next, we're going to go to the triggers. We run 4 copies of D of Nightmareland. This card is our power gainer. When you have a Nightmareland Vanguard, you put him into the soul. Choose one of your units, and that unit gains 1k for every Nightmareland in your soul, sorry. And as the game progresses, you're going to get a lot of Nightmareland units into your soul. But in addition to that, when you soul charge him, if you choose his brother unit, which is Dumb of Nightmareland, you get to draw an additional card off of that ability. Next, we run 4 copies of the stand trigger, Monochrome of Nightmareland. This is our primary counter charger and draw card. Once you activate this card, if you have 6 or more cards in this soul, you return them to the deck, then counter charge 1. But if you have 10 or more, you get to return him to the deck, soul charge 1, and then draw 1 off of him. So this card does everything you want: a counter charge, soul charge, and a draw. Next, we run 4 copies of March Rabbit of Nightmareland. This is our draw PG from V-Era. He's a 10k giving unit, and he's a PG. You know how these work. Finally, I opted to put as many as possible Nightmareland units that I could possibly get into this deck. So I run 2 copies of the heal trigger, the OG heal trigger, Alice of Nightmareland, and then following that with 2 copies of Cheshire Cat of Nightmareland. They're both the heal trigger variants to this deck. Going into the grade 1s, I run 4 copies of Dormouse of Nightmareland. This is another unit who can give you a lot of power, similar to D of Nightmareland. When he's on board, when you rest him, he gives 1k power to your Vanguard for each Nightmareland in your soul. So just how D can choose any other unit, he very focuses on the Vanguard. But in addition to that, if he is sent to the graveyard or drop zone through any means, even overloading a circle, you immediately soul charge 1 and give any unit with Nightmareland in its card name an additional 4k. So he's another unit that gives a lot of power. Next, I run a V-Era card. I run 4 copies of Velatin Killertail. This card is your resource regaining card. By resting her, you can send 1 card from either your drop zone or your damage zone into the soul. No matter what card it is, no matter what grade, she sends 1 card from either the damage or drop zone into the soul. That allows you to regain a lot of cards that you either need in the soul or you don't want there for later on for other builds, for other tactics. But she also has another additional skill. If there are 3 copies of her in a soul, when you take from the damage zone, you get to restand her and counter charge 1. So this is another counter charging unit. Finally, for the grade 1, I run 3 copies of Dementia Keeper. This is your primary soul charging engine card. This is the one of the cards that gains you the most soul. During your turn, during is an axe skill. Take him out of soul, drop him into the take him out of soul and drop him into the drop zone. Soul charge 2. It may seem as basic as possible, but where you can see where this deck is going, without him, you really couldn't build a lot of soul. Going into the grade 2, I run 4 copies of Dumb of Nightmareland. This is the brother unit of D of Nightmareland. So his skill says, GB1, if there's a D of Nightmareland in your soul, he gains 2k and becomes a constant 11k unit on board. In addition to that, for every copy of himself in soul, he gains another 2k when he's battling. So if there are 3 copies of him, he goes up to 15. Then with his brother in his soul, he goes up to a 17k unit. He's just one of your bigger beat sticks, and then he is the primary target for D of Nightmareland to gain your draw ability. This is part of the draw engine of this deck. The other grade 2 I run as a tech option is Icicle Resistance. Mainly because when she intercepts, she goes into soul, but that's not really the where this card shines. This card shines by its soul ability. By binding this card, you give one of your units plus 10k. This is a protect clan. Once you're going up against like force clans, some of your units can't get over that 13k threshold. So she allows you to build up. She's basically like she's a pseudo force marker for this deck. She builds up your columns for you. And she's not, I'm repeating, she is not a hard once per turn. You can literally remove all 4 from the soul and give 1 unit if you want 40k power. For my last grade 2, I run 4 copies of Emblem Master. Simply the fact that that's that early soul charging, getting as many cards as possible into the soul, like getting copies like her into the soul, Dimension Creepers in the soul, getting copies of Dumb into the soul as fast as I possibly can, just to build those numbers. All right, going into the grade 3s, I run 2 copies of Number of Terror. I really don't want to run this card, but it's just a spot filler right now. It's a good draw engine card, and putting cards that I have in my hand into my soul because I don't have any other way to get them in there as fast as I like. But this card will be coming out when I get 2 more copies of 2 other grade 3s, which are about to come up. But for right now, he's a decent spot filler. I also run 2 copies of Rufus. This is one of the spot fillers that Number of Terror is holding on to. I want to bump him up to 3. So Rufus says when during the main phase, counterblast 1, look through your deck, look for 3 copies of a single card, and if one of those copies if there's a copy of that card in your soul, add one of those copies that you search into your hand, send the other 2 to the soul. In addition to this, if there is no copy of the card that you search, all remaining copies that you did search go back to the deck and shuffle. But his auto ability is really where he shines for this deck build. When he attacks, if there are 2 or more grade 3s in the soul, you can retire 1 unit on the field. This unit gains all that unit's power and critical. So, which I'm about to show you soon after I show you the main deck of why I run this card and why it's so permanent for this build. But on its own, this is a very good card. You can literally rip your opponent's card to the field, especially if they're playing Force 2. Because that Force 2 is always permanent and that unit always going to have that extra 2 crit. Ripping one of their units that's on a Force marker gains you another 2 crit on top of his own. So he's swinging for 3 crit all the time whenever you get his ability off. Next, I run 2 copies of One Who Shatters Sin, Sheharat. I want to bump him up to a 3. Now, his ability is GB2 Darkness. For those who don't know what Darkness is a keyword from the G era. Whenever you soul charge a card, Darkness is activated. Basically, you get this keyword off for just doing your mechanic. His skill says if there are 10 or more cards in the soul, he gains 5k, and your opponent cannot guard with grade zeros from hand for his attack. So that literally just shuts down all grade 0 PGs. And you know right now within our meta, those are the most prominent PGs that are being played right now. Finally, I run the boss monster of this card. Queen of Nightmareland Hartrude. Her ability is GB1, Counter Blast 1, choose one of your rear guards, retire it, and she gains 1k for each Nightmareland in your soul, whether she attacks or is being attacked. So she's a good aggressive card on the Vanguard Circle if you cannot stride. Mind you, this is a stride deck. Or she's a good defensive card if you have, like, let's say 10 Nightmareland in the soul. That's additional 10k on top of her. That's literally getting rid of one of your opponent's trigger effects and making it easier for you to guard later on. The reason why she's the boss monster is because a lot of these cards cannot activate, especially the Nightmareland units cannot activate without having a Nightmareland Vanguard. And a lot of the abilities help push this deck to where it shines the most by either soul charging or providing a lot of power. Okay, that's it for the main deck. We're going to go into the G zone. For Guardians, I run 1 Dark Element Dismal. Basically, this card, when you guard, it gives one of your units the resist ability, and it cannot be targeted nor hit for the rest of that turn. I run 2 copies of Medical Studies of Extermination Vincent. This card, depending on how high you get your soul, can literally guard for at least 20k additional to its own guard. And on top of that, when you flip over another G unit, because it's one of the G unit flippers, you actually get the soul charge 1 card adding to that stack. He gains 5k guard for every 5 cards in your soul. And for the last 2 G Guardians, I run a Settlement of Attachment Duro Nuso. If there are 8 or more cards in the soul, she gains 10k guard. But in addition to that, if you were playing a darkness build, like I just explained what darkness was before, she'll send one of the darkness units on your field into the soul and draw a card for you. This deck doesn't run any darkness, but that 10k for only 8 cards in soul, that is literally one of the better dark regular G Guardians. I run 1 Xerath Dragon of End of World Dusk. This is one of my win cons if I am able to get to it. Basically, you counterblast, you stride this by paying the same name as your Vanguard. Whatever card is on your Vanguard circle, you have to discard for this card to stride. Counterblast 2, you reduce all units on your opponent's field power down to 1. Not 1k, just 1. And if they have 4 or less damage, you add 1 damage to their count. This is just another win con. So you basically stride on this and then start going ham, just attacking. Your opponent has to guard so much just to make up the power that they lost. Also, I run 1 Progenitor Dragon of Gloomy Dark for Mito. This is a good first stride if you're able to get it off successfully. This is a field nuke. It retires all units on your opponent's side of the field for every open circle that's on your field. And if you know Dark Regular, you do not play heavy until towards the end of the game. And then if he retires 3 or more units, you soul charge 5 and get to draw 1. So he's a good soul charging engine as well. I play 1 Sherhat. One Steeped in Sin Sherhat. This is another field wipe. So when he attacks Darkness GB2, you counterblast 1, he gains 10k. And then all the cards on your side of the field go into your soul, and then he retires all cards on your opponent's side of the field. And if there are 15 or more cards in the soul, your opponent cannot guard his attack with a sentinel unit. So he shuts down sentinels as well. I run 2 copies of Abominable 1 Gildares. This is one of the older G units. This was the original kill turn G unit. You at Counterblast 1, if there are 15 or more cards in the soul, he gains 10k and an additional critical, and your opponent cannot guard with grade 1s or higher. But because we got the grade 0 G Guardians, that's the reason why you don't see him much in play anymore, because no one's really running the grade 1 PGs. So he's easy to guard now. I run 2 copies of one who splits darkness blader mouse. This is your restanding stride unit. But in addition to that, whenever he attacks and you get into darkness, he returns all grade 0s from your field and from your soul to the deck. So it makes it way more easier to hit triggers off of his ability. In addition to that, when he swings, he gets 5k to 2 units on your field. So you can give it to himself and then another unit. Or better yet, if you want to play with the big brain, you give it to him, and then the unit that's boosting him, you don't boost it, but you give that power too. So when he restands off of his first swing, he has a pumped up booster behind him, giving him more power. I played, in addition to that, I played 2 copies of one who hunts soul, Balam. This is your quad drive unit. Counterblast 1, flip over a unit in your G zone. Retire one of your opponent's rear guards. He gains that rear guard's power. So whatever that unit's power is at the moment, he gains that unit's power. And then for every card face up in your G zone, you get to soul charge 2 cards for that. So he's another way of getting massive cards into the soul. Then his GB3 skill is Darkness. If the number of cards in your soul is 13 or more, your opponent cannot guard with grade 1s from the hand. Period. That's a blanket skill. That's for every attack that you do. And then the final card that I run is Evil God Ponith, Gastil Damios. I'm sorry, I'm killing this name. But this is your main first stride and first turn kill, which I'm about to go into to show you how you do this and the reasons why I run the grade 3s that I run. So when you go into this card, his ability says, once per turn, counterblast 1, turn a card face up in your G zone. Then choose any 2 cards in your soul, put them into 2 cards from your deck, put them into your soul, and then this unit gains all of those cards' ability. And then in addition to that, for every card that goes into your soul while he's on the Vanguard circle, your front row gains 3k. So the idea is to stride this card, right? And then when you stride, where did he go? One second. I'm looking for something. Where did he go? Oh, there he is. When you stride, you superior call Jack, right? Jack immediately soul charges another card. That starts it off. That's 3k right there. And then if you have dimension creepers in the soul, you want to wait. You want to build as many dimension creepers in the soul as possible. Then you counterblast 1, flip over a copy. Then you want to choose 1 Bruthus, 1 Sheharat, right? They go into the soul. That's another 6k on top of Jack's first 3k. So that's 9k so far. Then you want to activate Bruthus' skill, counterblast 1, search your deck for even more cards, prominently that dimension creeper that's in the soul. Stack even more dimension creepers into the soul, right? So you stack even more dimension creepers. That's another 2 cards. Sorry, that's another 1 card that went into the soul due to Bruthus' skill. Then, addition to that, you want to start soul blasting the units, add more cards to the soul, basically go through all your skills, keep adding more and more cards to the soul to build up that 3k to higher numbers, higher numbers, right? And then when you swing, sometimes I can get Jack all the way up to 50 plus k doing these abilities, adding more power to him, getting more strength, using cards like D and Dumb, Ice Resistance, giving all the power to Jack. So then I swing at him. That's just a pressure build. Then I swing with Demonted. So Demonted has the additional skills of Bruthus and Sheharat. So when Bruthus swings, you retire Jack. Gain all of Jack's power and his critical. Basically doubling the power that you gain through all those soul charges. And then on top of that, you have Sherrod's Darkness ability, which adds another 5k on top of it. Plus, your opponent can't guard it with a grade 0. So there's no P guarding this attack. So by the time you swing to your Vanguard, you can hit numbers over 100k. And then the critical on the card is doubled. So now you're swinging for over 100k with 2 crit. And all you got to do to end the game, especially if you have your opponent on the ropes, is hit 1 critical trigger. And it's game over. That's first stride, game over. So that's the way that I go about building the DI build. I know a lot of people use No Life King, and I forgot the other grade 3, the one that allows you to restand by ditching all the cards in your soul in your hand. I understand the reason why that is. It's the more funner build. But me personally, I don't like giving my opponent a way out playing around it. I want to shut things down and end the game as fast as I possibly can. So that's the reason why I build this version of the deck. It literally shuts my opponent down to where they cannot recover, and there is no way out of it. If I get to my kill turn, I get to my kill turn. The only way that I could possibly get out of it is if I damage check or soul charge these 2 cards early. That's the reason why I want to bump them up from 2s to 3s, so I have more of a chance of keeping them in the deck to when I get to my first stride turn, I can hit them as hard as possible. So, and again, this deck is very cheap. That's why it's a budget build, because all the Nightmareland cards, because they weren't ever completed in the G era, and they never saw prominence as a solo deck and what they really could do, all the cards are worth nothing. The most expensive card in this deck would be Rufus and Dimension Creeper right now. Every other card in this deck is worth cents. It is the easiest build that I've made for DIs that can be possibly bought. So if you guys like what you saw, if you're interested, if you have any questions, you can leave it down in the comments. Leave a like if you liked what you saw. And as always, see you later.